I'm about to read you his manifesto, which he published with a signature and timestamp hours before the attack, and his name was released by the police. But I want to urge you first to support Elias's actions. He is not a terrorist. He's a resistance fighter.
To support the actions of a man who just went on the street and murdered a young couple, Israeli Americans, Christians and Jews. He just went and murdered them. And he's coming and saying, I urge you to support them.
It is like, as they said, I am condemning Luke Skywalker for attacking the Death Star, because the Empire might crack down on the resistance. And while my point was that this attack...
Did he just talk about Luke Skywalker and the Death Star? He sees the conflict between Israel and Palestine as an analogy for Star Wars, for Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. He probably thinks that he's Luke Skywalker. The Force is strong with this one.
I take it back. I do not condemn the elimination of those two Zionist officials who worked at the Israeli embassy last night, and here's why. Israel has live-streamed a genocide to the entire world for the last 2 years, and I could talk to you for days.
Here is why the pro-Palestine movement need to be outlawed. It is a criminal movement, is directly supporting terrorism and helping recruit terrorists, domestic and abroad. Now let's watch the rest of the video with this dimwit.
About all the crimes, all the atrocities I reported on, and when I'm finished, you would still not know 1% of the Palestinian suffering. And you cannot expect to do such a thing in this world without the people standing up to fight to stop you in any way they can, to resist against you. And that is exactly what happened. Do not let yourself be fooled by the media, by the Zionists in this country who are telling you that this was an anti-Semitic terrorist attack. It was not. First of all, the man who was assassinated was a Christian Zionist, proclaiming it so on his social media.
Wait, so it's okay to murder now Christian Zionists just because they're Zionists? It's not a terrorist attack because he's a Zionist? So he is literally saying that it's okay. This guy have millions of followers on social media. Let's keep watching.
He spent his days working at the Israeli embassy, fighting to maintain Israel's genocide and support for that genocide in this country. He is a war criminal. And the same was true for the woman. This was not because they were Jewish, it was because they were Zionists.
He just said that it was okay to murder a young Christian and a young Jewish woman who were just about to get engaged just because they're Israelis, just because they think that it's okay for the Jews to have their only state on the face of this earth. That's exactly what he said.
And a manifesto from the suspect in custody, Elias Rodriguez, who apparently, if we are to believe this is true, he is part of the movement and he has consistently...
Elias Rodriguez. The name Rodriguez. What does Rodriguez have to do with Palestine? I bet that this guy have never been to Israel, never been to Palestine, but yet he decided to go and murder Jewish people. Now, how do you think he got radicalized so fast? Because of dimwits like this guy. And how do you think this guy got radicalized so fast? Because of girls like her who play so well the peace victimhood narrative while bashing and condemning Israel and undermining Israel's legitimacy to exist while protecting Muslim Brotherhood. It's a vicious circle. One will play the victim card and cover for radical jihad, and one will fall for it, usually, a dimwit like that, and then another one will consume that hate and that dehumanization of the Jewish people and of Israel, and will choose that it's a justified thing to go and murder Jews. That is the circle of the pro-Palestine propaganda machine.
He is part of the movement, and he has consistently posted about Palestine. He targeted these two because of their connection to the state of Israel, because they are Zionists, not because they are Jews.
He just admitted that it's okay to murder people just because they're Zionists, not because they're Jews, because they're Zionists. That is how wrong and dangerous people like him.
I'm about to read you his manifesto, which he published with a signature and timestamp hours before the attack, and his name was released by the police. But I want to urge you first to support Elias's actions. He is not a terrorist. He's a resistance fighter.
To support the actions of a man who just went on the street and murdered a young couple, Israeli Americans, Christians and Jews. He just went and murdered them. And he's coming and saying, I urge you to support them.
And the fact is that the fight against Israel's war machine, against their genocide machine, against their criminality includes their foreign diplomats in this country and internationally. And I want to remind...
He just made a call that it's okay to go and murder diplomats from Israel because they're part of Israel. I mean, so many things that should be hate speech and crime and inciting for violence just in one video by a 19 years old dimwit who is apparently a Mormon or a Christian.
Mind you that while this attack took the lives of 2 human beings, Israel has murdered thousands of Palestinian civilians in cold blood, without any shame, with pride rejoicing in the streets of Israel.
Now that's a lie. Israel didn't murder anyone. If Gaza would have not invaded Israel on October 7th, there would have been 0 people dead in Gaza by Israel. If Hamas did not go after they murdered the Israeli people, kidnap their children, and hide himself behind Gazan civilians and use them as human shields, mind you, they built very luxurious tunnels, huge tunnels. Billions of dollars were invested in building these tunnels. Not a single Gazan is allowed to go and hide in these tunnels unless he's part of Hamas, which is the gang that is stealing the US aid food trucks that are coming to Gaza. But this kid doesn't mention these things. No, he's just spitting out lies, which again is the core of the pro-Palestine movement.
Over this, and they get no attention in this country, while this attack is being used to weaponize violence against the movement, but we will meet it with our own greater resistance and escalation.
To weaponize violence against the movement. That is how dangerous, guys, and that's why I say, and I'm going to say it again, the pro-Palestine movement should be outlawed. It is a clear, direct movement supporting terrorism and helping to recruit terrorism. I haven't yet heard a coherent argument. Why should anyone agree with the pro-Palestine movement? I mean, what are they saying? Let's hear it out. What are they trying to put on the table? Give me one good argument. From the river to the sea, that's a call for a genocide. Intifada revolution, that is a call for suicide bombings and violence. Advocating for human rights? They're not. Advocating for children? They're not. Advocating for education? They're not. They're literally controlling the school system and teaching kids to become shaheeds from a young age. Advocating for peace and coexistence? They're not. They're calling to kill the Jews. They're dehumanizing the Jews. So what are they advocating? What are they trying to push? If you would let them have their way, what is going to happen? Are they going to make Israel a better country? No. We just had Arab minorities, girls in Israel, send a satellite to space. Druze from the village of Yarka. Girls, Arabs in Israel. If you would let the Palestinians take from the river to the sea, you will not have any minority doing any science project. They will be just chanting death and being miserable, and then they will look for someone else to blame as they try to globalize the Intifada. So give me one good argument that the pro-Palestine movement is bringing to the table that is worth supporting or worth not putting them outside the law and categorize them as a criminal organization, as a terrorist supporting organization, which is what they are. Full on. Stop. Convince me otherwise, because I would love to be convinced otherwise. I would love to see some kind of a glimpse of hope from this pro-Palestine movement, but I don't see anything. You know what here? See how he's talking about the movement. He sees himself clearly as one of the leaders or the spokesmen of the pro-Palestine movement. It's identity. You have a pro-Palestine flag. He have this kafia on his shoulders, which became, a sign of resistance and jihad. Somehow a Jesus shirt, kind of, to show his Christian, kind of, to try to talk to the Christians in America, I guess. Now, you see, the pro-Palestine movement right now is shaking. The ground is cracking under their feet. People are starting to understand that they're clearly a terrorist-supporting movement in the United States and worldwide. There's a reason why the Muslim Brotherhood is banned in many Arab countries, because even Muslims see how radical and dangerous this movement is, especially to the brains of the young and vulnerable youth. So they ban it because they're afraid of it, the Muslims, but Christian countries just allow it freely to roam in their streets and create havoc and bring terrorism. That's what it brings to your countries. Terrorism.
And if this manifesto is genuine, if Elias is who the police is saying he is, I wholeheartedly agree. Let's read this manifesto. Halantar is a word that means something like thunder or lightning. In the wake of an act, people looked for a text to fix its meaning. So here's an attempt. The atrocities committed by Israelis against Palestine defy description and defy quantification. Instead of reading descriptions mostly, we watch them unfold in video, sometimes live. After a few months of rapidly mounting death tolls, Israel had obliterated the capacity to even continue counting the dead, which has served its genocide well. At the time of writing, the Gaza Health Ministry records...
The Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. He is taking his sources from a terrorist organization. He is literally reviewing TikTok and terrorist organizations demonstrations as a credible source of media, and he have millions of followers.
53,000 killed by traumatic force. At least 10,000 lie under rubble. And who knows how many thousands more dead of preventable disease, hunger, with tens of thousands now at risk of imminent famine due to Israeli blockade, all enabled by Western and Arab government complicity.
Western and Arab government complicity. The reason that Western and many Arab countries are not doing anything to help the Gazans or to stop Israel is because they understand that Israel have every right to defend itself, and that Israel have their own women and children that are kidnapped by Hamas and still held in these tunnels in horrific conditions. And Hamas is not only refusing to give them back, Hamas keeps saying that they're want to repeat October 7. But you can't expect logic and understanding from this armpit-haired dimwit. Let's keep watching.
We who let this happen will never deserve the Palestinians' forgiveness. They've let us know as much. An armed action is not necessarily a military action. It usually is not. Usually it is theater and spectacle.
Theater and spectacle. So going in the streets of your country, grabbing a gun and shooting innocent people while they're walking hand in hand in the street, it's theater and spectacle. It's not an act of terrorism. It's not a crime. That is what this guy is implying, and that is why you end up having Rodriguez going around and choosing to murder people and then chant Free Palestine while probably never been to Palestine. I doubt this kid have ever been to Palestine. I doubt it.
A quality it shares with many unarmed actions. Nonviolent protests in the opening weeks of the
What did you say?
A quality it shares with many unarmed actions. Nonviolent protests in the opening weeks of the genocide seem to signal some sort of turning point. Never before had so many tens of thousands joined the Palestinians in the streets across the West. Never before had so many American politicians been forced to concede that, rhetorically at least, the Palestinians were human beings too. But thus far, the rhetoric has not amounted to much. The Israelis themselves boast about their own shock at the free hand the Americans have given them to exterminate the Palestinians. Public opinion has shifted against the genocidal apartheid state, and the American government has simply shrugged. They'll do it without public opinion then. Criminalize it where they can. Suffocate it with bland reassurances that they're doing all they can to restrain Israel where it cannot criminalize protest outright.
The problem is that a buffoon like that, with obviously no real life experience and doesn't know anything, he's probably reading all these things in ChatGPT, have so many followers that are listening to him, is because the pro-Palestine movement was allowed to go unchecked in the US. It's because this lie and propaganda sponsored by Qatari money and by Iran and by China and Russia probably has been allowed to poison the brains of your youth and your vulnerable ones. I keep saying that students are the dumbest version of adults. They're literally kids who just became adults, have no life experience, and then the most vulnerable. You tell them that they're special, they believe it without doing anything special. You tell them that they're going to be the generation who's going to change the earth, and everyone before them was just wrong and had no idea how life should be lived, and they'll believe it. And that's why you should protect these students. Literally, you should really be careful at the things that are allowing professor colleges to teach half-baked intellectuals to go and teach in these schools to these kids. They should be checked with a microscope because it's very dangerous. Look what's happening. There is many Americans that are listening to this idiot and thinking that he's right.
Aaron Bushnell and others sacrificed themselves in the hopes of stopping the massacre, and the state works to make us feel their sacrifice was made in vain, that there is no hope in escalating for Gaza and no point in bringing the war home.
Aaron Bushnell was a veteran that burned himself alive and said he did that for Palestine. So that was a guy who was obviously mentally ill and had some issues, and then he took out his life because he was so brainwashed by the pro-Palestine agenda. Obviously not a healthy way of doing things or protesting, and nothing that should be encouraged or revered like a heroic action. Now look at the point that he's trying to make here.
We can't let them succeed. Their sacrifices were not made in vain.
Their sacrifices were not made in vain. We can't let them succeed. So he's coming and saying that what Rodriguez did and what Aaron did was a huge heroic sacrifice, and we should continue this kind of movement. That is how dangerous, guys, the pro-Palestine movement in the West.
A word about the morality of armed demonstration.
So he's calling and justifying. He's clearly saying that there's a justification for armed demonstrations.
Those of us against the genocide take satisfaction,
And what was the last thing he said?
and abettors have forfeited their humanity. I sympathize
So
with
the
this.
perpetrators have forfeited their humanity. So anyone who's an Israeli, like myself, or like maybe your friend, have forfeited their humanity because we support the Jewish people to have their own one and only Jewish states. Jewish state that is actually giving people like me, an Arab from Israel, the freedom to practice his religion, was giving my mother the freedom to be who she is, a Druze religious woman that can walk safely in the streets of Israel. You can't do that in Syria, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Muslim countries. You can't live freely and practice freely your religion in these countries. But it's okay. They're the good guys. Israel is the bad guys, and they have forfeited their humanity. Let's hear that again. That's insane what he just said.
A word about the morality of armed demonstration. Those of us against the genocide take satisfaction in arguing that the perpetrators and abettors have forfeited their humanity. I sympathize with this viewpoint and understand its value in soothing the psyche, which cannot bear to accept the atrocities it witnesses, even mediated through the screen. But inhumanity has long since shown itself to be shockingly common, mundane, prosaically human. A perpetrator may then be a loving parent, a filial child, a generous and charitable friend, an amiable stranger capable of moral strength at times when it suits him, and sometimes even when it does not, and yet be a monster all the same.
So what he's saying here is, just because someone have different views than yours, even if he's a nice person, if he's a good parent, if he's a moral person, just because he have a different views than yours about some kind of a conflict that is happening on the other side of the planet, that you've probably never been there, you probably never really met someone from there, it's okay to revere them as monsters and to strip them from their humanity because they don't think like you. And hence why it's justified. What Rodriguez did is to go and murder them. That is exactly what he's saying.
Humanity doesn't exempt one from accountability. The action would have been morally justified taken 11 years ago during Protective Edge, around the time I personally became acutely aware of our brutal conduct in Palestine. But I think to most Americans, such an action would have been ineligible. It would seem insane. I'm glad that today, at least there are many Americans for which the action will be highly legible.
The actions that he's talking about is the murder of Jewish and Christian people in the streets of America. That is what he's saying, that it's okay. It was okay 11 years ago. It's okay to do it today. And the only thing that he's extremely happy about is because today there's more support from this TikTok generation and dimwits like this guy who will come and say, yeah, that's good what he did. We should support him. We should go and join him. Wow.
And in some funny way, the only sane thing to do. I love you, Mom, Dad, baby sis, the rest of my familia, including you. Free Palestine.
Only sane thing to do is to go and murder Jews. That's what he said.
Free Palestine, signed Elias Rodriguez. I ask you, what is the difference between Elias Rodriguez and Aaron Bushnell to you? Perhaps the only difference I can see is that Aaron Bushnell's sacrifice in flames, protesting his government's role in a genocide he could no longer bear to be a part of, is more palatable to this world.
The problem with this guy is that he still thinks he's a kid. He still behaves like he's 14. It's a lack of accountability. Honestly, the problem with this idiot is his parents, is the way that they raised him. They probably still nurtures him as like, this is their wonder boy. Such a narcissist that's so full of himself that he doesn't understand that there's a world outside of his feelings and emotions. And this medium, just sitting in front of the camera and not being in front of the people and just talking whatever he thinks and getting the likes for it and getting the attention for it, is overwhelming him. And he's becoming like Greta Thunberg or like, Macaulay Culkin. I don't know, maybe that's not the best example, but you get my point. When kids that obviously don't have a strong moral ground get exposed too fast and get too much into fame and people start listening, consuming their nonsense, they become useful idiots on steroids. Maybe Macaulay Culkin was not the best example. But my point is, Greta Thunberg is definitely a good example. 5 years down the road, if he ends up spending time in jail, which I think he should, it will be very interesting to interview him then, after he's been to jail and sat with real criminals, and kind of realize that there is consequences in this world. One of the most important words that I'm teaching my kid at the age of 5 and 6 already, that there is consequences for action, for good actions and for bad actions in life. This is literally how life works. It works in the animal world and it works in the human world. Kids like that, I mean, he's not a kid anymore. He's 19. Shame on his parents.
Because he did not throw the final stone in his last moments at the mob of criminals whose suffering they've brought to this world is more than this world can bear any longer. You might have seen my update early this morning where I condemned this attack, and I reaffirmed that I had a change of perspective after hearing critiques from people in the movement. It is like, as they said, I am condemning Luke Skywalker for attacking the Death Star, because the Empire might crack down on the resistance. And while my point was that this attack...
Did he just talk about Luke Skywalker and the Death Star? This is how delusional detached this kid is. He's not a kid. Like, I gotta stop calling him a kid. This is how delusional detached this idiot, adult, is from reality. He sees the conflict between Israel and Palestine as an analogy for Star Wars, for Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. You probably think that he's Luke Skywalker. The Force is strong with this one. And he's sitting there and crying emotionally, sitting in front of the camera. It's just so pathetic and it's just so wrong and so dangerous. Just like what I said, there is very evil forces that are nurturing these young Americans to become so possessed and brainwashed and full of hate and justification for murder, for jihadist-like, for Nazi-like behavior. They're justifying it. Wow, that's a pro-Palestine movement right there for you guys.
Will be used for a crackdown on the movement in the coming days. They're right. We must meet with escalation and stronger resistance. I hope my retracted condemnation does not allow our government to condemn me to a cell, but I don't know. Follow my page for more. Thank you and free Palestine.
That was his version from William Wallace speech, you know. If I'm gonna have to sacrifice and go to jail, so be it. Mommy, they want to put me in jail. I mean, wow, he just went on with an 8-minute rant about how he support terrorism, how he support anti-Semitism, how he support the murdering of Jews and Christians in the streets of America just because I don't agree with you, and how the people who murder them are actually heroes, and how you should fully support them, and even calling for a resistance for the movement. We should all go and bring the resistance, bring it home. You know, when the people say bring Intifada home, bring the resistance home, they're literally calling for all the madness that is seen, the crimes, the war, the death, the terrorism that is happening worldwide. Hey, bring it home, because it's good that it's happening there. It should happen in our streets. That's what they're thinking. Why? Because they literally want to take down your country. They want to take down your civilization. They have become like a cancer cell from inside your society. And in some aspects, they are way beyond repair, if you ask me. Like, it's really hard for me to believe how someone like him can stop thinking the way he's thinking. It's literally, his mind has been poisoned so badly that even if you put facts in front of him, like overwhelming facts of all the evil things that are done in Palestine by Palestinians, by Hamas, underage marriage, kidnapping, murdering, using your own people as human shields, torturing your own people, raping, burning families alive, chanting, you know, death to America, death to Israel, wanting to kill all the Jews and the Christians. So many wrong things that are happening with ISIS, with Al-Qaeda in Syria, in Lebanon. Show all these things in front of him, and it will still not help. He will still sit on a Starbucks that is an American product with a MacBook that is an American product, and will hate America and will support these ones that want to come and tear down everything that America have given him, every good thing that Western civilization have given him, and the sacrifice that people have made so he can have this platform and come and bash everything about the great country that he's living in. Watch this video and we can finish with that. That's very fascinating. Muslims are using Palestine to infiltrate the West.
Say that what we need to do, and I would remind every American that don't just look at the surface. Deeper within is a cancer, and the cancer is a university system that not just is woke, which is also a symptom, but has been funded by foreign nations that want to destroy us. I think that question ultimately, Dr. Phil, exposes the hypocrisy and the moral vacancy of their entire movement. By not condemning Hamas, They actually argue that Muslims have no moral agency. And if they really wanted freedom, they would chant death to Hamas. They want to demonize the West. There's this red-green axis across the world. And this is the synergy of the Iran theocratic movement, Iranians and Muslim Brotherhood, with the China, Russia, Venezuelas of the world, who in the UN have worked together for generations.
He forgot to mention Qatar. Qatar is probably the bank behind these agents that are trying to destroy the Western.
The Islamic part of that red-green axis has been basically radicalizing our community through the Al Jazeeras, through the medias of their world, and in the United States. So that's how American citizens are radicalized.
Green, red, jihad and communism. That's what he's trying to refer to. Jihad, Muslim and communism. There is a bizarre romance that are happening between these two, although they are very different ideologies, and they will probably end up fighting with each other, undoubtedly. If they will have their way and they will take over the West, they will start, destroying one another. But the reason they're together right now is very, very simple. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They're both clear enemies of the West, of democracy, of Christianity, of Judaism, of basically anything that is not them. That is how dangerous it is. When you look at it, Christianity is not an enemy nowadays, for a long time already, of anything that is not them. Christians are not enemies of India. Christians are not enemies of tribes in Africa that live their own life and believe their own beliefs. Christians are not enemies of the Jews. They're different religions. They have a lot of connection, but they're different religions. Christians are not enemies of Muslims. They don't see themselves as enemies of Muslims. They let them live how they want. Let them pray for whoever they want. Islam, on the other hand, a big portion of them sees anything that is not like them as their enemies. Communism sees anything that is not like them as their enemies, and they want to take that down. Hence is why the enemy of my enemy became my friend. The only problem is that democracy and the West don't see it that way anymore. They became so naive that they forgot that they have enemies out there that want to destroy the way of living. And the pro-Palestine is one of the main proxies right now operating in the United States. And if you want to have one clear-cut organization that I'm telling you should be outlawed, is the pro-Palestine movement. Undoubtedly. That's my opinion. Like it or not, up to you. So anyway, guys, stay safe and don't do anything stupid. In general, don't consume your information about the Middle Eastern conflict by a privileged white boy, 19 years old, Christian, Mormon, American kid who's probably never had a real job in his life. Really, that's a very good advice. I'm being very serious.